In the last 4 years, I've realized so much about Airbnb. And in this video, we're going to be going through the 4 things that I wish I knew before getting into this kind of game, right? So let's get into it. First thing is that cash flow is king. And what I mean by that is in the summer months, you would make majority of your money. The occupancy rates are absolutely phenomenal. You would be seeing things like 80, 90% and feeling on top of the world, as you should, of course. You finally got your pieces of the puzzle together, you've prepped the house, and people are finally staying, right? This demand is not to be confused with what you will be averaging throughout the year, because in the winter months, you need to save some of that money to actually protect you when things go downhill, right? And not necessarily downhill if you obviously have the right systems and infrastructure in place, which I've spoken about on this channel. But essentially, you want to protect yourself against some of the peaks that happen in terms of when property is actually having more occupancy, and then obviously the troughs in terms of when it goes down in terms of not a lot of people staying around, right? And this is really important because it's a seasonality kind of thing in terms of this business model. And it's essentially kind of you running an ice cream van, right? And in the ice cream van during the summer, you have loads of kids on your street flock into the van, flock in to buy anything and everything you've got inside of it. But in the winter months, you might not even be outside, right? Fortunately for Airbnb, of course, you still have a lot to sell in terms of nightly bookings. However, it is not as fortunate as the summer months, given the high demand of leisure stayers, people who have contracts in the local area. They usually do those during the summer rather than in the winter, right? So the key here is to make sure that you use the summer months to save for the winter months. And of course, you should be good throughout the year. The second thing is that, especially when you're not owning these properties and you're trying to get them from landlords, the best thing for you to do is not rely on one acquisition model, right? And what I mean by an acquisition model is that landlords are not the only way that you guys can basically get properties, right? So you can obviously go to estate agents, which a lot of you guys would have been taught, but essentially estate agents are usually bombarded with so many requests from every single person who comes off a course or every single person who's watched a YouTube video, right? There is a newfound method that I have, and I've spoken about again on this channel, in terms of ways to directly contact landlords, but not only just any landlord, landlords who are actually interested in working with your business. And this model is using essentially Facebook and Instagram advertisement to essentially contract and acquire these landlords who are actually interested in working with yourself and actually getting them to apply to work with you. So you set the right frame and actually have them on speed dial, given that they would willingly give you their contact information, right? So there's so many different acquisition models. The best thing is to actually use a range of them rather than just isolating one or two different ways, because the more ways that you can do these kind of things, the better the chances of results. Volume always negates luck is the saying that I kind of have as my motto, right? And the third thing that I wish that I knew before getting into Airbnb is that the wrong landlord will absolutely kill your business, right? First deal, I'm not proud of it, but I got the job done. The first deal I ever had was up in Bradford. Lovely city, really lovely people, loads of culture there. But unfortunately, the area in Bradford that I had it in was not the best, right? Especially for Airbnb, just for business purposes. Again, lovely people, but for business purposes, it was not ideal. And the reasoning behind that was because I didn't know enough about the area. I had no clue what I was doing. That's definitely for number two. And the third thing was that the landlord himself was not in a very financially stable position. Now, he'd been willed the house by his father, who'd obviously passed on, and he was in no financial position to continue maintaining the house to a decent standard. We had leaks from the bathroom going into the sitting room. We had rat infestations, you name it, we probably had it. And I was left holding the proverbial bucket when it came to actually trying to fix everything and basically having to retrospectively charge him out of his rent. For a while, it obviously worked, but of course, on a long-term business basis, it just refused to make sense. And eventually, I just had to stop the business agreement, given that, fortunately for me, the contracts I had allowed me to do that, right? So the fourth and final aspect of what I wish I knew before getting into Airbnb is the fact that this business is not about property. It is definitely about hospitality, right? And when you get these properties, you need to make sure that every kind of way that you're going about appealing to guests needs to be niched. And what I mean by that is a property that is for a contractor is going to be so different to a romantic getaway for two in your lovely Lake District, right? And that needs to be so obvious, not only from the way that you list the property, but from the pictures and from the furniture that you actually insert inside of this house. This would allow your guests to know that you are in a capable position to cater to their needs that they have, whether it's for 2 nights or it's for 2 months, right? And this needs to be inside and embedded into your business model when you're moving forward, so that you can obviously optimize for that type of guest and make sure that you're making money in a way that is obviously profitable. Hopefully this video has been helpful to you guys. If you want to know more, please follow, like, subscribe the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.